What if I told you that the most powerful move you could ever make in a relationship isn't what you say, it's what you don't say? Imagine this. One day you go quiet, no explanation, no reaction, no desperate attempt to prove yourself. At first, she thinks it means nothing, but then something happens. Her confidence starts to crack. Her mind begins to race. She replays every word, every action, every mistake. And suddenly she's haunted by a silence that speaks louder than your voice ever could. That silence becomes the one thing she cannot ignore, the one thing she cannot control, and it begins to eat at her, day by day, thought by thought. This is the secret no one ever told you. That silence is not weakness, it's power. And when you understand how to use it, you will never beg for attention again. Because here's the truth: silence makes her question everything. It forces her to confront herself. It makes her wonder if you've moved on, if you've leveled up, if you've finally realized that you were the prize all along. And that thought, that possibility, will drive her crazy. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share will change the way you see relationships forever. Once you understand the psychology of silence, once you see how it shifts the entire dynamic, you will never again waste your energy on people who don't deserve it. This is not about games. It's about reclaiming your value, your dignity, and your power. And when you master this, you will realize something shocking. Your silence doesn't just change her, it transforms you. Silence is not weakness. It is the loudest declaration of strength you can ever make. We live in a culture that has convinced you that every disagreement must be explained, that every wound must be defended, and that every misunderstanding must be corrected with words. But words, when they come from a place of desperation, do not carry weight. They are scattered, unstable, forgettable. Silence, on the other hand, is deliberate. Silence has weight. Silence forces the other person to sit with what they have done, what they have said, and how they have shown up in your life without you rushing to rescue their perception of you. When you remain silent, you are not showing submission. You are showing mastery. Because silence requires a strength, and restraint requires strength. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, anyone can beg to be heard, but it takes an entirely different kind of man to say nothing and yet communicate everything. That kind of silence is not emptiness, it is power. Think about it this way: when you keep explaining yourself, when you keep justifying why you deserve better, you are actually teaching her that your boundaries are negotiable. You are revealing that her actions, no matter how careless, can still pull a reaction out of you. And as long as you react, she knows she controls the tempo. But the moment you stop explaining, the moment you go quiet, she loses her grip. Suddenly, she has no script to follow, no arguments to dismiss, no words to twist, only silence, and silence cannot be manipulated. That is why silence is never passive. It is active. It shifts the entire dynamic. In silence, you reclaim authority over yourself. You are no longer handing her the steering wheel of your emotions. You are no longer making your peace dependent on her response. Instead, you are saying without words, I am not here to convince you. I am not here to prove my worth. I am not here to compete for your attention. I am here to stand firm in my value, and whether you recognize it or not is irrelevant. That is strength. And here is the part most men never realize. Silence makes her confront herself. Words allow her to deflect. She can argue, she can blame, she can justify, but your silence gives her nothing to push against. It becomes a mirror. And when faced with that mirror, she cannot escape her own reflection. Every choice she made, every moment she took for granted, every time she underestimated you. It all comes back, not because you shouted it into her face, but because you left her alone with her own conscience. This is why silence has always been the strategy of the disciplined. Because when you go silent, you are not running away. You are rising above. You are no longer on the battlefield where words clash and emotions spill. You have stepped onto higher ground where your presence is felt without effort. She feels it. She notices it. She cannot ignore it. And the more you hold your silence, the more powerful it becomes. Of course, silence is not about punishment. It is not about being cold. It is about clarity. It is about choosing not to invest energy into places where it will only be wasted. You silence yourself because you respect your energy. You silence yourself because you value your peace. And by doing so, you send a clear signal, not just to her, but to yourself, that you no longer tolerate chaos dressed as love. And what happens next? She starts to wonder. She starts to question. The silence echoes in her mind because deep down, she knows what it means. It means you are no longer in her control. It means your validation is no longer hers to manipulate. It means that the power has shifted, not because you forced it, but because you refused to play the game. Remember, silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is communication at its highest level. It says, I have nothing left to prove. It says, my energy is too precious for this nonsense. It says, I am no longer available for disrespect. And the beauty of this is simple. Silence cannot be debated. She can fight with your words, but she cannot fight with your silence. So when you go silent, understand this. You are not vanishing, you are positioning. You are not surrendering, you are ascending. And while she scrambles to decode the meaning of your absence, you are busy building yourself into the man you were always meant to be. Because in the end, silence is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. And the man who masters silence masters himself. And once you master yourself, no one, absolutely no one, can control you again. When you go silent, something very powerful begins to happen, not outside of her, but inside her. Her mind starts to work against her. Human beings cannot stand a vacuum. The brain hates uncertainty. When there is no answer, it will create one. When there is no explanation, it will imagine one. And when there is no communication, her thoughts begin to spiral in every possible direction. That is the exact reason why your silence is so effective. It doesn't soothe her, it unsettles her. Think about it. When you are constantly available, when you are quick to reply, quick to justify, quick to give her attention, she never has to wonder about you. You remove all doubt. You remove all mystery. You remove all tension. But when you go quiet, when you don't respond the way she expects, suddenly her mind is left with gaps. And those gaps are not empty. They are filled with questions, doubts, insecurities, and fears. That is the psychological law of silence. The less you say, the more she thinks. She starts replaying everything you said before. She reanalyzes your tone, your gestures, your last message. Did you sound distant? Did you sound too calm? Did you sound like a man who doesn't need her anymore? That overthinking is not accidental. It is the natural result of silence. Your absence forces her brain into overdrive because the certainty she once had in you has been replaced with mystery. And here is the truth. The mind always amplifies silence louder than words. An argument can be forgotten in hours. A heated text exchange can be deleted in seconds. But silence lingers. Silence has no ending point. It doesn't resolve. It doesn't close. It leaves an open loop in her psychology. An open loop's a torment. Her mind cannot rest until it closes that loop. And because you are not giving her answers, she is left to invent them. That is why silence makes her crazy. She doesn't just miss you. She obsesses about you. The dangerous thing for her and the powerful thing for you is that silence flips the dynamic. When you were the one talking, explaining, proving, she could dismiss it. She could roll her eyes, call you dramatic, or tell herself you were overreacting. But when you go quiet, she loses all of that control. She cannot argue with what you have not said. She cannot twist words that do not exist. She cannot predict a man who is not giving her clues. Now she is the one chasing clarity. Now she is the one analyzing your silence the way you once analyzed her words. And make no mistake, silence does not just create doubt, it also creates fear. Fear of losing you, fear of being replaced. Fear that your attention is now invested somewhere else. Fear that the grip she thought she had on you is slipping. And that fear is far more powerful than any speech you could ever give, because fear is not logical, it is emotional. And emotions are what move people, not explanations, not arguments, not reason. Silence is also powerful because it magnifies the weight of your presence. The less accessible you are, the more valuable your attention becomes. Suddenly, every time you do speak, every time you do show up, it has meaning, it feels rare, it feels significant. But when you are always available, always explaining, always defending, your presence loses its impact. Silence restores that value by creating scarcity. And scarcity, in human psychology, always creates demand. Of course, silence is not about games. It is about self-respect. You are not withdrawing to manipulate her. You are withdrawing because you refuse to spend your energy where it isn't honored. And that refusal, that quiet confidence, is exactly what shakes her the most, because she realizes that your silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. It is a man saying, I will not invest in noise. I will not argue for my worth. I will not beg to be seen. The irony is, the more silent you become, the louder her mind becomes. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to chase to be noticed. By stepping back, you force her to step inward. You force her to confront herself, her choices, her treatment of you. And no matter how she tries to distract herself, your silence keeps echoing like a question she cannot answer. Why did he stop talking? Why did he stop trying? Why is he not reacting anymore? That is why silence is not weakness. It is psychological strength. You are not fighting with words. You are letting her fight with herself. And in that battle, she will always lose, because her mind will not stop until she gives meaning to the silence you created. So understand this: when you go silent, her mind doesn't rest. It runs. It overthinks. It questions everything. And that is not because you punished her. It is because you finally reminded her of something she forgot, that your attention is not free, that your presence is not guaranteed, and that your worth does not need her recognition to exist. In the end, silence is the storm that makes her restless, the mirror that makes her confront herself, and the discipline that makes you untouchable. And once you master it, you will never again need to prove your value with words. Your silence will speak it for you. When you refuse to react, when you choose silence instead of chasing, you are not punishing her. You are reclaiming yourself. That is the moment the balance of power shifts, because silence does more than make her overthink. It reminds her of a truth she never wanted to admit, that you were the prize all along. Too often, men forget this. They believe their value comes from being accepted, from being chosen, from being validated. They pour out their attention and their effort as if their worth is something that needs constant approval. But the reality is, your worth doesn't begin when she sees it. It begins when you see it. And silence is how you prove to yourself that you do. When you do not react to disrespect, when you do not beg for clarity, when you do not chase for answers, you are showing a different kind of power, the power of self-control. That control is magnetic. It cannot be ignored. Because most people are addicted to reaction. They need the last word. They need to prove their side. They need to keep the argument alive. But the one who can resist that impulse, the one who can sit in silence with complete calm, that is the one who commands the highest respect. Silence becomes a statement. I am not desperate for your attention. I am not enslaved to your recognition. I will not lower my standards just to be seen. It declares that your self-respect is greater than your need to be understood. And this is what unsettles her the most. Because once a woman realizes that she no longer has control over your emotional state, she has to face the reality that she cannot play with your attention. Your silence proves that her approval is no longer your oxygen. And without that leverage, she feels powerless. And here's the depth of it. Silence is not about withholding love. It's about protecting your dignity. There is a difference between silence that comes from fear and silence that comes from strength. Fearful silence avoids conflict, but strong silence communicates, I am unavailable for disrespect. I will not give my energy where it is not valued. That distinction is everything, because when silence comes from strength, it doesn't shrink you, it elevates you. It forces her to see you not as someone she can bend at will, but as someone she must respect if she wants access to you. The psychology of this is simple but profound. People crave what they cannot control. The more you show that you cannot be easily swayed, the more they feel compelled to prove themselves to you. Your silence draws out the truth. If she values you, your absence will awaken her. If she only valued control, your absence will expose her. Either way, you win. Because silence reveals what words could never uncover. Think about the opposite. When you react to everything, when you explain every emotion, when you rush to make her understand, you are teaching her that you are easily accessible, that no matter how she treats you, she can pull you back with minimal effort. That accessibility kills value. But when you go silent, you restore that value. You remind her that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And privileges can be lost. This is why silence is so powerful in reclaiming your value. It transforms the way she perceives you. Suddenly, you are no longer the man who needs her approval. You are the man who values himself enough to walk away from chaos. That kind of man is unforgettable because he does not fight to be chosen. He chooses himself. And that choice is what makes her mind restless. She knows deep down that she misjudged you, that she mistook your kindness for weakness, that she believed you would always be available. Your silence proves otherwise. And let's be clear, this is not about arrogance, it is about alignment. When you go silent, you align with the truth of who you are. You are not chasing because you are not lacking. You are not explaining because you are not guilty. You are not reacting because your peace is not negotiable. That kind of man does not need to shout to be heard. His silence is enough to shift the entire atmosphere. So when you go silent, remember what you are really doing. You are not trying to manipulate her. You are reclaiming your own value. You are teaching yourself, before anyone else, that your dignity is worth more than temporary validation. And once you internalize that, no one can make you beg for what you already own. The truth is, simple silence is the language of self-respect. And the man who chooses silence is the man who finally understands his worth. He doesn't need to chase. He doesn't need to prove. He doesn't need to fight for recognition, because his very silence communicates what words never could, that he was always the prize. And that is the reminder I want you to carry with you. Every time you are tempted to argue, to explain, to beg, remember this. The moment you go silent, you reclaim yourself. And once you reclaim yourself, you become untouchable.